In this episode, we're going to take a look at some of the coolest 80s villain vehicles that are based on insects. So, stick around. Hello everybody and welcome to Nostalgia Syndrome. My name's Rob, and in this episode we're going to take a look at some of the coolest 80s villain vehicles that are based on insects. Now, I know this is kind of cheating to make this a Halloween episode, but what's better for Halloween than creepy, crawly bugs? Also, let me address the elephant in the room. Yes, Nostalgia Syndrome. That is the new name for Days of Dorker Past. For some reason, I just always had the idea of Days of Dorker Past in my head, but once I put it into motion a year ago, it just doesn't flow, it doesn't feel right saying it, so I changed the name of the show yet again to Nostalgia Syndrome. So, we got a new name, a new intro, but the same old dorky nostalgia greatness. Oh, and another thing before we begin. This list is made up exclusively of 80s toys. The last list that we did when we looked at villain vehicles that were based on animals, that was more of cartoons. So this time we're looking at toys. Number 1 on the list is Knucklehead. This toy was produced in 1988 by Playmates, and it was a Foot Clan vehicle from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles toy line. Knucklehead took its inspiration from a spider. This single-seated vehicle had a great feature where it could descend down on a string and its 8 arms would grab a Ninja Turtle and then it could lift them back up. The arms of the spider actually had the same type of forearm guards that the Foot Clan ninjas had. It was kind of a neat thing, but it was kind of goofy with its boxing gloves at the end. I guess it kind of plays into the whole aesthetic of the toy line of a lot of mutated or repurposed junky things being turned into cool robots and vehicles. Knucklehead made 2 appearances in the cartoon series. The first appearance, it wasn't a vehicle at all. It was just a spider robot. And in its second appearance, it was a vehicle, but on a larger scale, for multiple occupants. It also appeared in the Archie Comics line of TMNT comics, and it actually looked pretty cool. Number 2 on the list is the Fright Fighter. Number 2 on the list is the Fright Fighter. This toy was released in 1986 by Mattel, and it was part of the Masters of the Universe toy line. This Dragonfly-inspired aerial vehicle was part of Skeletor's motor pool. I guess it's called a motor pool in a fantasy world. Anyway, the Fright Fighter had a neat little trigger in the back that when squeezed, the wings would flap and the pinchers in the front would grab whoever was in its way. It was decked out with big engines and laser guns, and it was an awesome vehicle. Of course, it was one that I never had, but I remember it so vividly seeing it on the store shelves with its great package art. The Fright Fighter never made an appearance on the cartoon, but it was in the Star comic book. And as a neat little side story, in the UK version of Masters of the Universe comic book, instead of Skeletor owning the Fright Fighter, it was Hordak and his forces that used them. But all in all, this was a great design for a toy, and just fit perfectly within the Masters of the Universe universe. Number 3 on the list is a little bit of a cheat because it was released in 1979 by Mego, and that is the Hornet Roid from the Micronauts toy line. The Hornet Roid, which sounds like something you might need to apply a cream to, was actually an awesome air vehicle. Just like the Fright Fighter for Masters of the Universe, the Hornet Roid employed a flapping wing mechanism on the back. It also had mandibles that would close around whatever foe it would get in its way. Part of the alien subset of Micronauts, the Hornet Roid gets a lot of flack because its small, compact cockpit does not hold that many of the actual alien figures. The figure that it came with actually had 4 arms, and it was even hard to put into the cockpit, and it's what it came with. Again, this was one that I didn't have, but being released in 1979, this was one of those toys that just kind of ended up in other kids' toy boxes. And it kind of just fit into the world of Star Wars, G.I. Joe, whatever. It was a great toy with a really neat color scheme, which it did not match a Hornet any way, shape, or form, but it did match the whole alien aesthetic. Number 4 on the list might be another cheat, technically, but I'll explain how I came about my decision. But anyway, it is Stinger in the Star Ears toy line, released by Tomy in 1985. Now this awesome little scorpion car, and yes, a scorpion would kind of fall into the insect family because of its ties to the arachnid family. Anyway, it's just an awesome little vehicle, and it came packed in the Armored Battle Station playset, which is awesome in itself because it's a big freaking snake. But that's a list for another day. Anyway, the reason I have put this in the villain side is because of how it looks, and when you look at the checklist artwork, they put it in the middle of both the good and the bad. And I think it just comes down to if your parents could actually afford this playset, you can use it for whoever you wanted to. This was an awesome toy line, and I was lucky enough to have a couple of the little robots from it, but nothing this big, nothing this grand, and nothing as awesome as Stinger. I mean, the tail at the top could shoot lasers, it could roll on wheels, it had pinchers on the front. It was just a great toy. Number 5 on the list is a return to the Masters of the Universe toy line, and that is Spydor. This was another one of Skeletor's awesomely innovative vehicles, based on an insect. This one, of course, based on a spider, was battery operated and could walk forward and backward. It had huge red legs that would propel it across the battlefield. And of course, like a lot of the things on this list, it had mandibles in the front that could grab whomever it wanted to. Again, decked out with laser cannons, this thing was awesome. It could fit one figure, and as the awesome package art shows, Skeletor himself was driving this thing, which he did on all the packages. He must be a pretty awesome pilot, on top of being a sorcerer, a swordsman, just an all-around badass. It never made any appearances in the cartoon. It made a few in the comics, but I think its biggest claim to fame that people like to point out was you can see it in the background of the movie Big. That's pretty neat, I guess. But anyway, this has been our list of 5 of the coolest villain vehicles of the 80s based on insects and in toy lines. Wow, that's going to be a long title. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you got something to say, please leave a comment. I love reading them, and I love getting back to everybody. And if you're new around here and you enjoyed this, or any of the episodes that YouTube is recommending down here, please hit subscribe. And if you hit that little bell icon, you will be notified whenever there's a new episode. So, until next time, thanks for watching. Keep being rad and stay dorky.